Hey you guys, so let me share with you the Patanjali invocation, then we'll break it down a little bit. It's very interesting. Yogena chitasya padena vacham malam sharyasya cha vaidikena yopakarotam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjalirana tosmi abahu purushakaram shankachakrasidarinam sahasra shirasam shvetam pranamami Patanjalim Srimate Yanantaya Nagarajaya Namo Namaha. So that's the invocation to the master of masters, Maharishi Patanjali. So it says in the invocation, salutations to Patanjali, heir to the great masters. So it's calling him out not as a myth, but as a master on a mission, a very clear mission to do what? To offer the world teachings that will suture. So the word suture means to heal a wound, right? So that's the root word of suture is sutra. Su, good, tra, protection, good protection, to heal a wound, suture back together. What? The fracture in our minds, first of all, but also the fracture in the yoga tradition, where there were different traditions and sub-traditions taking yoga away from itself and splitting it into parts. Patanjali's mission was to suture the wound of yoga and to demonstrate that yoga is one path, it's one singular path. Now, there might be different practices that allow us to move towards the goal of self-remembrance in a different way, but the path is singular. That's the mission of Patanjali. That's the function of yoga. So the invocation says, Patanjali, heir to the great masters who gave us Ayurveda to purify the body, Sanskrit and grammar to purify speech, and yoga to purify the mind. Patanjali, who holds conch, that means get fucking ready. This is serious. Bring your big game, blow the conch, like Bhagavad Gita, battlefield. Pull your socks up, roll up your sleeves, because it's time to get serious. And that's, this is a serious character we're talking about, Patanjali. This is not yoga tourist stuff. This is getting right into the heart and soul of the tradition. Carrying a conch, carrying a disc. The disc is there to take off the asmita ego, so all of the BS. And then the sword is to cut through the bigger BS, what we these days refer to as the matrix or the perceptual prison that keeps us stuck in thinking that things are one way when they're completely the opposite. Cut through that, slice through this, blow the conch and get ready. Patanjali, who is surrounded by an aura of electric fire, who has 1,000 heads and a human body below. Interesting, 1,000 heads and a human body below. Some kind of reference to being human, kind of humanoid, maybe, but something else. And then the last line, Nagarajaya Namo Namaha. Salutations, we honor and bow perpetually to the Serpent King, Patanjali. So there's a lot to unpack in there, but the first thing is to note, Patanjali didn't just write amazing texts on yoga to purify the mind, but on many different things. The Charaka Vartika, the Ayurvedic text, and the Mahabhasya, the text on not just on Sanskrit and grammar, but on how to use the mind to learn correctly. And also, this text was about how to engage with words as what they truly are. Words are packages that hold Shakti within them. This is what we're doing with mantra japa practice. We are not meditating really on the syllables of the mantra, but using our power of absorption, our samadhi power, to penetrate through the outer shell to get to the Shakti, the power that's inside, which is a pure frequency. It's got nothing to do really with the syllables. The syllables are just packaging. We don't meditate on the syllables. We concentrate on the syllables, but we meditate on the Shakti within the syllables. So that's all part and parcel in Mahabhasya. But just to show you, this was one of the missions of the master Patanjali to show that it's all one system, whether we're talking about Sanskrit or whether we're talking about Ayurveda or Tantra or Yoga or Vedanta or Bhakti or Jnana or Karma or Kriya. It's all the one system, Sutra. This is another mistake. It's not the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, it's the Yoga Sutra. Sutras means it's fraying. Sutra means it's singular, one singular thread tying it all together. That was the mission of the master. Yoga Sutra, tie it together. Don't let it fray at the edges and become sutras. Yes, there are many sutras within Yoga Sutra, but the text itself is called the Yoga Sutra. Let's keep unpacking because it's so fascinating. 1,000 heads and a human body below. Nagarajaya, salutations to the Serpent King. Okay, so this is all reference to, again, to a story belonging to the text of Mahabhasya. And the evidence of Patanjali being a real walk the earth being, and not just some mythical character, we find it in this text, Mahabhasya, where even to this day, there are pages within that text that on the bottom of them have written a kind of a word thrown in there. It's got text, boom, there's this statement. Aja Bakshitam Etat. I'll tell you what that is in a minute. First, the story. So the story is this. Patanjali, and back in the day, our memory, humanity's memory used to be very, very strong because our meditative power was strong and these things go hand in hand. But as the wheel of time turned and the Kali Yuga got deeper and deeper and deeper, the collective memory power of humanity started to decline. So what was once taught as an oral teaching, the Mahabhasya was always taught orally, just through transmission, teacher to student, vocally. Patanjali decides that at a certain point, he needs to get this text written down. Plus, he's saying, okay, now I'm going to vacate the earth for a little while. So I don't want to leave the earth empty-handed and not have these incredible teachings within Mahabhasya, which is about how to use your mind to learn. So what he does, he says, all right, I'm going to gather 1,000 of my best students around, and I'm going to dictate Mahabhasya to you, and you're going to be my scribes. You're going to write it down. So they come and gather around. But he says this: he's a hardcore dude. He's a serious dude, blow the conch kind of dude. And he says, this is the deal. I'm going to go behind that curtain there. Don't look in there. Let me do my thing. And using my Yoga Shakti, I'm going to transmit the Mahabhasya to all 1,000 of you, as if we're doing a one-on-one. 1,000 heads, 1,000 faces. But don't you look behind that curtain. And here's the other deal. For the transmission to be done uninterrupted, no one leaves the circle. Once we start the transmission, the dictation, do not get up. I don't care what happens, do not get up and do not look behind that curtain. So Patanjali positions himself in the center, and then there's these concentric rows of students who become scribes. Of course, there's this, weak-minded little so-and-so who can't hold his bladder. And so he needs to get up and have a piss. He's right at the back, so he thinks, maybe no one's going to see me. So he takes up and takes the piss. This is already a problem because Patanjali has already blown the conch on this one and said, if any of you obey these rules, you all suffer the consequences. But this guy can't, hold his bladder, so he's got to go find a tree and take a piss. Meanwhile, back in camp, another little punk can't control his curiosity. So he sneaks up while everyone's, deep in the transmission, and he peeks behind the curtain. And what does he see? He sees Patanjali's true form, which is a humanoid reptilian figure surrounded by an aura of electric fire. Patanjali sees this kid pull back the curtains, and all of a sudden, that electric fire shoots out and incinerates every single being there. Actually, 999 of them, because one of them is behind the tree taking a piss. So after almost everyone has been incinerated, this kid comes back, doing his zip up or whatever. What the hell happened here? And by this stage, Patanjali has returned to his, more subtle teacher form. And now there's quite a conundrum, because on one hand, the rules are the rules, and this kid must take responsibility, as was the stipulations. If one of you fuck up, you all take the karma. And so he has to suffer the same fate. He has to. That's just the way that it is. But at the same time, Patanjali, now in his kind of subtler, gentler form, has this obligation to always protect his students. Oh my God. So what to do? It's a real conundrum. So they come up with this plan. The kid, he knows he's got to go. But how? So Patanjali says, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to teach you how to activate the siddhi of spontaneous combustion through fire. But before I do that, before I teach you that, and before you combust yourself with this siddhi, I'm going to transmit directly to you the entire Mahabhasya, the entire text. And you're going to hold it, even after you disembody. After you disembody, see that banyan tree over there? I want you to go and take your spirit and infuse it into that tree, and wait for the perfect moment when someone's going to come along, and you will recognize that being when they come along. And when they do, your job is to figure out a way to transmit the Mahabhasya to that person, and then they will bring it forward into the world. Bing, bang, boom. He self-combusts. His spirit rises up, infuses itself into that banyan tree. Time goes on. Patanjali disappears. And then eventually, a very well-learned super sage yogi scholar, Govinda Swami, comes along. And in that moment, there's a recognition of Dharma. When you just recognize something. So that's what happens. And in that moment, they realize, this is what my life has been building to. And so the kid, whose essence is now in the tree, starts to transmit the Mahabhasya onto the leaves of the tree. So now he's projecting, and the lines of the text are now filling leaves one at a time. And as one leaf gets full, it drops to the floor. And then the next one gets full, it drops to the floor. And Govinda Swami is now compiling them into pages, basically, of the Mahabhasya. Quite an exciting situation. So Govinda Swami doesn't recognize or realize that there's a herd of goats rushing towards him. They love a leaf, these goats, from the brush, from the bushes over to the side, and they start chomping on the leaves and eating the pages of the Mahabhasya. Which is why, even to this day, if you find a correct translation of this text, on some of the pages, right at the bottom, the text will just stop, and then there'll be a blank space where it says, Aja Bakshitam Etat, which means, this section was eaten by goats. Sorry. So this is the story of Patanjali. This is where we get a lot of the information that's in the Invocation. The 1,000 heads is the 1,000 faces. The humanoid body below, but this serpent-like figure above. Well, you gotta make your own extrapolations about that, and perhaps expand your mind a little bit. I'll leave that to you. But what I can say is this: Yoga Sutra is fucking awesome. Yoga Sutra is, so this is what's called Yoga Shastra. Yoga Shastra means the final authority on all things yoga. If you want to know about yoga, then you have to know about Yoga Sutra. But here's the issue. Quite often, Yoga Sutra is presented as some form of elementary text. Or, you do a little teacher training and the teacher presents it to you as the 8 limbs. Mate, the 8 limbs don't appear until the very back end of the 2nd chapter. Before that, we've already got these profound teachings on Raja Yoga, on the light and the joy and the beauty and the honey within the higher mind, Ishvara Pranidhana. We've got Kriya Yoga with, tapas and svadhyaya. Man, there's so much that's happened about real yoga. before we get to the 8 limbs. But a lot of the times, Yoga Sutra is presented as the 8 limbs, and I've got to say it's one of the least important aspects of the whole text. So, get your chompers into Yoga Sutra. Yoga Sutra for me, and I've been lucky enough over the last 20 years to study Yoga Sutra in a lot of different ways. You know, breaking down the words of each sutra etymologically and studying them intellectually pretty much got me nowhere. Memorizing the sutras, that was a little bit better, because at least then I'm strengthening my memory power, and then when the memory power goes up, the samadhi power goes up, the meditation power goes up. And, you know, I kind of liked being able to recite Yoga Sutra. That was kind of cool, but that was probably just my ego. Need to take that off with the disc. The most extraordinary way that I've ever studied this text is through practice. By coming to learn through the lineage, the practices that are hinted at secretly within the pages cryptically of Yoga Sutra. Patanjali doesn't spell them out. This sutra equals this practice. This sutra equals that practice. That's why we need A, the commentary from Vyasa, and B, the oral lineage to get the actual practices. Once we practice the teachings in Yoga Sutra, that's when they illuminate. These teachings, this final authority, cannot be studied intellectually. It says it in verse number 1. Nushasanam, Atta Yoga Nushasanam. Nushasanam is a practice manual, not something to be studied intellectually or academically. You can't understand Yoga Sutra academically, intellectually, logically. You have to practice the practices that fit together with the different sutras within the Yoga Sutra. Then they come to life. And that changes everything. For me, that transformed me into from an asana-centric yogi that did a little bit of meditation because I felt like I had to a lover of meditation who now uses asana and pranayama and bandha and mudra and other energy-based practices committedly, but knowing that that is preparation for meditation. Yoga is meditation. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. It's about the mind, it's about the mind, it's about the mind. So how far has the modern yoga world drifted from that core teaching? That yoga is about the mind. It's not about the body. We might use the body, but it's to get to the mind, because the mind is the doorway back to consciousness. Purusha Svarupa. That's the point, to get established back in our true form, our Svarupa. Tada drastu Svarupe vastanam. When the mind slows down and comes to a stop, the fluctuations, nirodha, stop, then we rest in our own true essence, which is the one who truly sees, the seer, Purusha. And if we can't slow down the mind because we're too busy heating the room and jumping around in front of the mirrors and backflipping and handstanding and flip dogging, if we can't slow down the mind, then we will think we are the mind and we will suffer. The matrix will have us by the balls. And that's what's happening with the modern yoga world. It's the yoga matrix. It's so far from being evolutionary because the mind is not slowing down as a result of it. Yoga Sutra, as I said, is fucking amazing. If you want to understand yoga, you have to understand Yoga Sutra. So, now, if you are in Europe in September, come and study Yoga Sutra in Munich with the crew, with Patrick Broom and the awesome crew there in Munich. This is our home away from home. We love it there. We love the Munich crew. They're super dedicated to real yoga. But if you're in the hood, or if you can get yourself into the hood, come and study these teachings. They will change everything. This training in September is listed as module 1 of our 300-hour training. But it doesn't matter if you're not interested in teacher training stuff. This information is just vital if you're a dedicated yogi or yogini and you want to understand what yoga really is beyond the flip dog, beyond the asana. You have to learn about Yoga Sutra. If you do want to use this as a part of teacher training, then, there's going to be some assessment pieces which we give you after the fact. You'll have to teach this meditation, give that lecture, teach this meditation. That's something we'll discuss later. But this training in Munich in September, Yoga Sutra training, it's for everyone who wants to know about yoga, because Yoga Sutra is Yoga Shastra. So if you're interested in that, and man, I hope you are, I'm telling you, this training, this information, Yoga Sutra, when you study it as a practitioner, not as an intellectual, not as an academic, but as a practitioner, it will change everything. So get in touch with Patrick and the crew over there. Yeah, it's going to be cool. So come and practice with us if you're in the hood. All right. Lots of love.